I simply was asked to come back to St. Mary of the Woods to be called promoter of the cause, someone who would try to further it by telling people about Mother Theodore. So my first work was really talking about Mother Theodore. Then I was, shortly after that, was given the title vice postulator. A postulator is a man in Rome, and the word postulator means one who is asking. So the postulator lived in Rome, almost always was a priest or a bishop, but in 1994, our Superior General had appointed a layman who had studied canon law as our postulator, and then there has to be here at St. Mary of the Woods a vice postulator, somebody who can give him the information that he needs. And so I worked with him for several years, but I came into the cause at a time where I always say I cannot take a lot of credit because the hard work had already been accomplished. One of our sisters had written a statement on Mother Theodore's heroic virtue, probably a book about 6 times thicker than any large city's telephone book, in which she described Mother Theodore's life and how she lived. That's the hardest part. When that was approved, Mother Theodore was given the title Venerable. Then there had to be 2 signs from God, not signs from Mother Theodore, strictly speaking, because we don't believe that the saints work miracles. Only God can intervene in the laws of nature and change things. So we had to have 2 examples of how persons were healed of some illness, cured in some way, in a manner that's not explainable medically. When I came in 1996, I began, and in 1997, Mother Theodore was declared venerable.
So I guess in a way this got Mother Theodore on the Vatican's radar in order to eventually investigate her life more and to get her higher honors?
We had sent to Rome a miracle that we thought was a miracle, a case of one of our sisters who had written the first biography of Mother Theodore. We had gone through all the process of preparing that and sending the account of that to Rome, but we would appoint a postulator, and he would serve maybe 2 or 3 years and then be made a bishop and sent away someplace. Then we'd appoint another one, and we had to do that over a period of about 94 years. We did it 10 times, so that all these materials passed from one postulator to the other over that period of time. And it wasn't until 1998 that we appointed a layman who was not going to be made a bishop, not sent away. He read them all and felt they were very worthy of consideration, and he submitted them to the first group of theologians and cardinals in Rome that had to approve it. And when that was formally approved and sent to the Holy Father, then Mother Theodore was declared blessed.
Which then is a major step on the way to being recognized as a saint.
But it had been introduced by the first bishop of Indianapolis in 1909, and it took until 2006, just a few years short of 100 years, before she was named saint.
Well, now that I understand that, I have a better understanding of why there was such frustration. Even when I was in Catholic schools in the 50s and 60s, we used to pray that Mother Theodore would eventually be made a saint. And here I should, for those who don't know the process, not say that she was made a saint. She was recognized as having led an exemplary life and now is in heaven.
That was very well said. Dennis, I'm proud of you and your Catholic education, because that's exactly true. Saints are not made. And we know that there are some people that attribute the whole process to, they think it's done only for money's sake. That's not true. It's done to remind the rest of us that all of us are called to holiness of life. That's why we're here. That's what life's for, to show our love and devotion to God. And that's what Mother Theodore did by everything that she did. by teaching the children, by caring for the sick poor in their homes, by taking care of orphans. Her life was spent in showing the love of God, actually being the love of God for other people. So she was not made a saint, but a thorough study of her life was done. Everything that she wrote, everything that she said, everything that she did, all the various works that she accomplished, that was all examined. And after it was, there were 2 signs from God that were named and recognized officially as miracles, and a panel of doctors and theologians had to examine all this. If any of the doctors saw a reason that the cure took place because of medical treatment, it was thrown out. And that happens, we know now today, over and over again. Miracles are proposed miracles are submitted, but they're not accepted because some set of doctors examined it and they said this is medically explainable.
So what we have then is a situation where the Vatican has to make darn sure that any intercession on behalf of someone, in this case your founding mother, Mother Theodore, that anything that relates to a health item is something genuine through prayer and not something done medically. Take us back, if you will, to that first instant that you showed the Vatican to try to prove that Mother Theodore was a person who was capable of doing some great works even after her death.
Sister Mary Theodosia was the community historian and archivist when Bishop Chittard, the first bishop of Indianapolis, came over here and asked the Mother General, who was Sister Mary Cleophas at the time, asked her to have a sister write the life of Mother Theodore. So Sister Mary Theodosia was the one who wrote the first biography. She finished it in 1906. Shortly after that, she herself, the sister who wrote the book, was diagnosed with serous carcinoma, a severe form of breast cancer. She had a radical mastectomy in Terre Haute, Indiana in 1907. You can imagine what the surgery was like at that time. As a result of it, she could no longer use her left arm. It was rigid at her side. She additionally had a large abdominal tumor the doctors said they couldn't touch because of her poor condition. Mother Theodore, by this time, had been removed from the cemetery and brought down to the lower part of our church, where she was given a place of honor. And Sister Mary Theodosia went down to pray there one night, and she said, I went down to pray not for myself, but for another sister who is sick. She named her. And then she said, I said to myself, I wonder if Mother Theodore has any power with God. Now, that was very good theology. She didn't say, I wonder if Mother Theodore has any power. I wonder if she has any power with God. In other words, I wonder if I'd ask her if she would ask God. That's what we call intercessory prayer. And she said, when I said those words, I didn't hear anything outside myself, but within myself, the words were very clear, yes, she has. And she said, it startled me, and I was afraid I was going to see something, so I just started up the stairs. And I stopped on the landing to get my breath, and the second time the sensation came over me, yes, she has power with God. And she said, I went on up to my room, and I tried to distract myself. I had an article due at a publisher the next morning, and I had to finish it that night. And the lights all went out at 9 o'clock, so she lit a candle, and she wrote until 1:45. When she finished it, she went to bed. At 4 o'clock, the lights all came back on, because that's when all the sisters were supposed to get up. And she said, when the lights came on at 4 o'clock, after 3 hours sleep, I had this feeling, this wonderful sensation of feeling completely healed. And I got out of bed and started spreading my covers when I realized suddenly that my left arm, which had been rigid for 20 months by this time, was now perfectly normal. The tumor was gone, and I had to pull my skirt over 5 inches and pin it to keep it up. Then she went out to the pump and pumped 2 buckets of water and carried it in. I guess they had to do that in those days for they didn't have good plumbing. And then she said, I went to the chapel and made the way of the cross around to every station. And then after morning prayer, I went to the Superior General to tell her that the tumor was gone and my arm was no longer rigid. Now, that miracle took place in the early 1900s. And a medical panel came here to St. Mary of the Woods, and a group of theologians, and they examined it, and they wrote it up and sent it, and that was the one that was passed from one to the other for almost 100 years. But finally it was approved in 1998, and she was declared blessed. Then we had to have one more sign from God. And this was a man who worked for us. He was our facilities manager, and he had had cataracts on both eyes. When the doctor operated on the first one, it healed quickly, no problem. After a while, the first eye began to swell and droop, was red, was painful all the time, and he couldn't see. And his wife was a registered nurse, and so she had encouraged him to go back to this doctor, and he went back to the doctor who had done the surgery for 10 treatments. And after the 10th treatment, the doctor said, I'm sorry, but there's no more that I can do, so I'm sending you to Indianapolis to a specialist. And when he went there, the specialist said, well, given the condition of your eye at this point, it would be very serious to try to do a cornea transplant. When he said cornea transplant, I knew that was from a cadaver, and I don't think I wanted it. And he said, but I went home, who was the nurse, and she said, let's wait. So he said, we waited, and 2 months went by, and 3 months went by, and he said, I was getting very distressed and depressed. He said, one day I had a meeting at Providence Center, and I came out and I walked down the hallway past the church, and I heard someone playing the organ. And I stopped and I said, maybe I should pray. And then he said, but I'm not a Catholic. I don't belong to any church. But he said, I was so distressed that I walked into the church and I sat down, and I just loved the prayer that he said. He said, I just said, Mother Theodore, this is your house, and I'm your servant. And then he said, I corrected myself, and I said, no, I'm more like one of your family. And if you could help me, I'd really appreciate it. But if you can't, that's okay. And he said, when I finished the prayer, I had this wonderful feeling of peacefulness. I went home that night, and I didn't even tell my wife that I had stopped in the church. And I went to bed, got up the next morning, went in the bathroom and looked in the mirror. My eye was not red, not swollen, not drooping, no pain. He said, I could see, but it wasn't perfectly clear. And I said to my wife, do you think it's better, or am I just hoping?